Do you often get tenses confused in Latin? Well, after this video, you won't. I'm going to break down the different tenses in this video to show you where they fall on a timeline of actions. Hi everyone, and welcome back to bambasbat. Before we start, I want to give you this free guide to all the verb endings in Latin. It's got everything you need to help you identify all verbs in Latin, from the basics right the way through to the most advanced grammar. It has all the endings for every tense, every voice, and every mood. So it will be really useful as you start getting familiar with these verb endings. You probably won't need it all at once, but one day it will all come in really handy. So go and download it now from the link in the description below. So tenses in Latin are absolutely essential to get right in your translations, because you do get marks for accuracy. However, you can't do that if you don't know how the tenses relate to one another. If you want a complete explanation of any of the tenses I go over in this video, you can find the links to more in-depth videos on each tense in the description below. This is just a wrap-up of all of them, all in one go. So let's look at a very useful timeline of Latin tenses to help you visualize this. Let's start with the present. The action is happening right now. I am walking. This is my starting point, and it uses that first principal part in Latin, ambulo. Then we have the future tenses. There are two, which are both very useful in stories or speeches. First, simple future. These are events that haven't happened yet, but will happen. I will walk. This uses the present tense stem, but remember that for the first and second conjugation, you use the bo, bis, bit endings, and for the third and fourth, you use am, es, et. In this future group, we also have the future perfect, which are actions that will, at a point in the future, have already happened. So I will have walked. This is a completed action in the future, and this tense doesn't use the present stem. Instead, it uses the perfect stem, which is the third principal part in Latin, ambulavi. So we take off the I, which is the perfect ending, and add the ero, eris, erit endings. Don't forget, you can find a link to more in-depth explanations of all these tenses in the description below. So they're my future. Then we get to the past tenses, and there are three of them in Latin, and they all have a range of meanings. We have the imperfect, which is there now, which is a continuous action in the past. I was walking. This uses the present stem, which is that first principal part again, with the bambasbat endings. It can also mean I used to do something, so I used to walk, but more often it's I was walking. Then we have the perfect, which is a completed action in the past. This is an action that has already happened. For example, I walked. This uses the third principal part, the perfect stem, to form it. Remember, this can be really different from the present tense stem. So ambulo, ambulare, ambulavi is not very different, but fero, fere, tuli, latus is an example of a verb that's exceptionally irregular in its stem. So be sure to learn the principal parts when you're learning verbs. The perfect tense can also be translated as I have walked, and sometimes this is better for fluency, so just keep it in mind. Finally, still in this section, still in the past, we have the pluperfect tense. Now, I love this tense because its name is so literal. Pluperfect basically means plus perfect, as in like more than perfect. It's a completed action further back in the past. Now, that can be hard to get your head around, but basically remember that you translate it as had. I had walked to the shop when my bag broke, for example. The walking has already been completed by the time the bag broke, so I have to put it in the extra past tense. This is why it's further down my timeline than my perfect tense. So something in a perfect tense is a completed action that's happened, and a pluperfect tense happened even before this. This tense is also formed using the perfect tense stem. You take the I off from the third principal part and add on eram, eras, erat, and so on, depending on who you want to do the verb. So here are the tenses that use the present tense stem and the tenses that use the perfect tense stem. I've split them up for you. So hopefully this helps you to see which ones use that first principal part, so the ambulo. So with present, you just add ambulo, ambulas, ambulat. For the future, if it's first and second conjugation, use ambular bo, ambular bis, ambular bit. If it's third and fourth, use traham, trahes, trahet. And for the imperfect, it's the present stem as well, and it's ambular bam, ambular bas, ambular bat. The perfect stem ones, ambular v for perfect, ambular visti, ambular vit. For the future perfect, it's the ambular-vero, so you still have that perfect stem. Ambular-vero, ambular-veris, ambular-verit. And then for the pluperfect, ambular-veram, ambular-veras, ambular-verat, etc. Gosh, the pluperfect is very long and hard to say. Now, a quick note about the imperfect and perfect tenses. The imperfect, which I've translated as I was walking, can also sometimes be a normal perfect tense in English if you're in your translation. This is just for fluency. So, for example, authors often use imperfect to show things that happen all at once, like the army was approaching and was attacking the city. You can just say the army approached and attacked the city. Fluency is often rewarded in exam conditions if the literal translation is very stiff and clunky. If you're worried, you can always write imperfect next to a translation of a verb in brackets to show your understanding that you've chosen to highlight fluency, but equally, you can just translate it in the imperfect tense as was or used to. It's absolutely fine. And that's a quick overview of all the tenses in Latin. Now, I've just focused on active verbs in this video. If you want passive verbs, you'll be able to find videos on this topic on my channel soon. Don't forget to go and download that free PDF, a complete reference guide to Latin verbs. It has all the endings for active and passive verbs, plus indicatives and subjunctives for all tenses. You might not need it all right now, but it's broken down into easy sections, so you can pick and choose the bits you need. I hope you found this video useful. Let me know if you have any questions or grammar topics you want me to cover. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on bambasbat.